let's go down to House File 18, and I believe there's an amendment on this one. So let's go to 18, and I'll also do that if we have a couple of things. If we have members that are not on the committee, I think it's good to hear their bills and get them on their way. And also, when you bring in witnesses, the first question will be, are you more than 50 miles from here? If we get kind of bunched up and we're going to run out of time, we do want to get the testimony from the witnesses that have driven a ways. And then because the other folks and like the lobbyists or roadies and groupies, isn't it? Something like that. That's what we call them. Yeah, that's what we call them. And we love them dearly. They are to be here, and so we would, nothing personal, but we would get citizens that have driven from quite a ways away, and then citizen testimony, and then we really do appreciate the government relations folks that bring a lot of information to the committee. So with that, I will move House File 18. Representative Engen, could you please describe your bill? And I thought there was an amendment somewhere, isn't there? Oh yeah, got it right here. Okay, very good. That might not be in your packets, that might be separate. Okay, to the bill, Representative Engen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. And while I'm missing Judiciary Committee right now, this does seem like the most fun committee. So I can nestle up right next to Jim Joy there after we're done here, if that's all right with you. But I'll explain my bill here. It's pretty simple. This is going to make Minnesota a better state to raise a family and to start a family or expand a family. Since 2016, we've seen a 20% increase in the cost of raising a child throughout the nation. And it's actually at $240,000 by the time that you hit 18. So what we're trying to do through this bill is expand those infant care items that parents are needing to purchase to start a family or to expand a family. And I'm going to read here a quote from the CBS article from September 10th of last year that I shared with you guys. It should be in your packets. It says that 51% of parents say that they suffer anxiety due to not having enough money to support their family. That's sad. There's more that we should be doing to support everyday folks who are just trying to raise a family here in the state, and I think that this bill aims at doing just that. The overall revenue estimate is around $10 million, and for returning members, I know that we had very, very broad support on this bill in both the House and the Senate last biennium. So hoping to provide that relief for families and would yield for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Representative Engen. Let's go to the amendment, so then when people come testify, we'll know what we're testifying to. I believe Chair Gomez has the DE1 amendment, is that correct?
Yes, Chair Davids.
Chair Gomez moves the DE1 amendment to your amendment. Chair Gomez.
Thank you so much, and thanks to Representative Engen for bringing this bill forward. I think that the issue that you identify is real. Like, the cost of raising a child is enormous, and it keeps going up, and it's it's a major burden and a major challenge. Representative Hansen talked about her interest in helping support solo families or solo parents, and we all have a shared interest in that. The DE1, instead of doing a blanket sales tax exemption for baby products, it beefs up our nation-leading child tax credit. So in the 2023 session, we established a credit of $1,750 per child in Minnesota, with income that was income targeted. And so really acknowledging the fact that the burden of the cost of raising a child doesn't fall on Minnesotans equally. People who are lower wage workers just have really immense challenges. And I would say that, the increase in the cost of raising a child that Representative Engen identifies is really not about sales taxes on bassinets. It's about things like the cost of childcare and, other issues that we really have to take a serious look at addressing. And this kind of blanket tax exemption on baby products, in that it's not targeted and it's not, it's not addressing childcare costs, which are like kind of probably the main driver of the economic burden of raising kids. It is the kind of thing that, we're spending $20 million potentially on this, which is a big chunk of money when we're talking about a deficit in the out biennium. And we really have to take a close look when we're spending money with an end in mind. In this case, addressing cost burden for families. Is this the best use of $20 million? So, if this, like tax exemptions do, because they are not income targeted and because they are not actually, like they apply equally to all products. So this covers bassinets, cribs, strollers. So that means, there's a company called Suomo, which I didn't know about until I started Googling this. They sell a very modest white plastic bassinet for 14,000 pounds, which is $17,390. But they also have a gold-plated bassinet that they sell for $61,803. So the tax liability, if you were to buy a $61,000 gold-plated bassinet, would be over $4,000. You can also go to your local Target or Walmart and buy a bassinet for $26. On that purchase, you would garner a savings of $1.80 in sales taxes. And which family is going to save $4,000 versus which family is going to save $1.80 on this bill? Whether you buy like a Costco stroller or the $10,000 Gucci model, that's like if you get the like the stroller with the car seat that you put in, you get up around 8, 9, 10 grand for a Gucci stroller. So those are sort of ridiculous examples, but when we're doing like a blanket sales tax exemption, we do have to think about who the benefits are going to. And wealthy people will spend a lot more money on these items. I can just speak for myself. I have a 12-year-old kid. I don't think that I spent a dime on a bassinet, a crib, a mattress, any of these items, because like I got them for free from my friend who had a kid before me. I didn't go and I didn't have the resources to go and buy the Gucci stroller. And so I personally, as a young parent, wouldn't have benefited from this tax exemption at all. So I'm going to withdraw my amendment, but I guess I just think that when we're talking about solving a problem, which is a problem, right? The cost of raising a child in Minnesota right now, which is presenting a serious burden to people, we have to ensure that the public dollars that we are spending and tax cuts and exemptions are spending. They are spending of the public dollars. We have to ensure that we're doing that in a way that actually addresses the issue and doesn't just kind of send money to something that, that doesn't necessarily target the folks who could most benefit from that spending of public money. So withdrawing my amendment, but I appreciate the chance to have the conversation, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Madam Chair. The amendment, the DE1 amendment has been withdrawn. I want to back up here just a little bit because I always go people for, people with concerns, and the department on the first bill that we laid over, I never went to the department. Would the department like to have any comments on that bill? It'd be fun. Okay. So we will get back to Representative Engen's bill. Member questions. Any questions from members? Representative Whitty.
Thank you, Chair Davids. Representative Engen, looking at the numbers, what kind of savings would families see in your typical family?
Representative Engen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Whitty. Yeah, I actually have a list here just off of Target.com. This isn't Gucci, bassinets or strollers or cribs. I know not many parents that I know of are purchasing those items, but we got a Sorel loose crib at $595, and after tax, that would be $635.91, a savings of nearly $50, $40.91. Sealy Baby Crib Mattress. This was their most basic model, and that was $129.99. After tax, $138.93, a savings of $9.94. Bob Gear Stroller and Car Seat. This was a higher end model, but mid-tier higher end. And that was priced at $849.99. And after tax, it was $908.43 for a savings of $58.44. Dr. Brown's 8-ounce baby bottles. These are not gold-plated. These are not the highest end model, but those are $30, and after taxes, it's $33.02. So we're seeing some real savings. And just off of the 7 items that I just listed, we're looking at $138 of savings for parents. And so I think that that's real money that's going back into the pockets of folks who are most impacted by sales taxes, which even the Minnesota Reformer in a, let me note the article here, April 4th of 2023, the Minnesota Reformer is citing that sales taxes are one of the most regressive taxes that you can pass to somebody. So I think that this is a way that we can support families, and I hope that answers your question.
Representative Whitty, Representative Joachim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Engen, thank you for bringing this forward. I was just looking up when this was first brought to the legislature and made law, and it was before after all my kids were born. Would have been great to have the basics that you that is listed in the original bill. Just wondering how you chose the items for the expansion, because some of them do have much higher price tags than what is in the underlying bill.
Representative Engen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Joachim. Being a new father myself, going to Target with my wife and seeing all the items that not only I'm purchasing, but friends and peers of ours are also purchasing, that influenced my decision. These are young families themselves who are saying, yeah, what about this? And so I jotted it down and made sure to make a note of it. But I'm always open to expansions if that's something that you'd like to explore.
Representative.
Chair Davids, Representative Engen, thank you. Actually, I was looking at deleting some of the higher cost items, but we can take that conversation offline if you like.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Engen, yeah, this is an interesting bill. I'm just kind of curious because it does, you know, I fit more in the cycle with Chair Gomez to be, you know, I have 3 boys, and that third one, his mattress worked fine. But the thing that I'm wondering about, you know, because if you're looking at luxurious stuff like Chair Gomez went into, are you willing to look at amending the bill to like cut it off at a certain level, saying, hey, you know, this is excessive? I don't know. I'm just asking that question.
Yeah,
Representative Engen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Hewitt. Yeah, I'd be more than open to an amendment for exclusion of Gucci based items. But I think most of the things that are listed here, if you go to any real retail store, Costco, Walmart, Target, some of the stores that you're purchasing these items at, they're not going to be those gold-plated ones that we had discussed. But offline, I'd be more than happy to discuss those possible changes.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Representative Engen. As a solo mom, I'm just kind of curious why we're stopping at babies if the goal is to help families. I have a 13-year-old who wears size 13 shoes, and he's been going up in a shoe size every year with his age, and he likes fancy shoes to stay cool at school. And so I think, you know, trying to make sure that he at least has some shoes on his feet that fit him is far more expensive than I experienced when I had my son or my daughter at 17 years old. And I think I'm just kind of curious, why are we stopping at babies and not also helping children who are in later ages?
Representative Engen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Hansen. I'd be more than willing to expand this list. I know that I also have a bill for school supplies, full elimination of sales taxes on school supplies. And I know while shoes are already not taxed here in the state of Minnesota, would love to talk to you offline about expanding this list, because quite frankly, after increasing taxes on families, $10.5 billion, I'm more than willing to expand that list if it's going to provide real relief for families across the state.
Representative Hansen.
I have no follow-up, Chair. Thank you.
Any other member questions? If not, Representative Swazinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know Rep. Hansen's question was maybe a little bit rhetorical, but I think one of the reasons why you would limit it is because, you know, obviously as children grow, the use of those items wouldn't necessarily be dedicated to a child's use, an adult could use them, where a baby item is pretty specific. And so by curtailing it to child use, those items are only going to be used, I mean, an adult is not going to use a bassinet, but an adult could use a full-size bed. And so I think that's why you primarily would focus this as it's easier enforcement. And yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you, Representative. Okay, any other member questions? With that, we will go to, we have a list, Sarah Gengelhoff and Maggie Hange. Let's go with Sarah first, if we could. Come on up to the table. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record, please.
Chair Davids, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak on House File 18. My name is Sarah Gengelhoff, and I'm representing the Women's Foundation of Minnesota as their Director of Advocacy and Innovation and as a mother myself. We're a community foundation that conducts research on how women and girls are faring in Minnesota. And we provide grants to nonprofits across the state to help more women and their families be safe, healthy, and prosperous. It's through this research reflected in our 2024 Status of Women and Girls in Minnesota report that we find that families today are facing extraordinary barriers to achieving economic stability. In addition to nationally skyrocketing housing prices and food costs, working families must also budget for the immense cost of daycare. Center-based infant care in Minnesota is actually more than the annual cost of college tuition at the University of Minnesota. The sales tax on baby products affects all families, regardless of income, but it has a disparate impact on women and single female-headed households. While Minnesota is a national leader in women's workforce participation, absolutely, women here still earn 81 cents to the dollar that men earn. That's almost $500,000 lost over the course of a career. And this gender wage gap is more stark for women of color, who lose more than $1 million over a lifetime. The overall poverty rate in Minnesota is lower than the national average. However, single mothers' income levels across racial and ethnic, rural, and urban areas fall far short of the cost of living. Paying a tax on already expensive yet essential items compound the burden on these families. The Women's Foundation of Minnesota commends Representative Engen for recognizing the challenges facing families today and bringing this bill forward. This bill would add to the tax exemption items like baby utensils and baby wipes, but it would also now include the higher cost item for infants, things like car seats and cribs and strollers. With this bill and with policies that also support the realities of parenting, we can move the needle towards creating a more welcoming and supportive state for all families and give all children a better start. We urge you to support House File 18. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the testifier from the members? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Lee.
Yes.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair. I'm rather short, so my hand doesn't expand very long. Thank you to the witnesses. I just wanted to ask, maybe if you could talk a little bit about how this would work, because I'm curious what the value of is for something like the child tax credit, which sends cash to parents versus asking parents to spend more to save more, which sounds a lot like, like a rewards program that you might have with, your local stores. Just wondering what that value is.
Ms. Gengelhoff?
Yeah, well, I would say that the difference between that and this is that this shows up immediately at the cash register for someone going to buy these supplies. Also, we can expect that people have these networks where they're able to get cribs and bassinets. I know I was gifted a crib which actually contained lead in it because it was so old in the paint. So this allows people to go out and get safe products that are new if they so wish, if they so need to. And it allows them to do that on their own timetable immediately when they need the items.
Representative Lee?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I think, I don't know if Rep. Gomez wants to maybe talk a little bit about this, but this is also why we kind of restructured the tax credit to also have upfront payments, understanding that we don't want parents to wait for an entire year to see the benefits of a child tax credit and really getting those direct cash payments.
Chair Gomez, any thoughts? Or?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we did pass last year in our final bill, we funded the ability for the Department of Revenue to send periodic advance payments out to families who receive the child tax credit. And so, you know, and like I said, I mean, that is really a way of spending public money that is very targeted to those lowest income Minnesotans, the families who really need the help the most, who are facing the highest cost burden. And so, you know, that was just our kind of point on this is that there are, you know, there are ways to spend public money that's targeted to those who need it the most, and there are ways to spend public money in a way that's very general and diffuse. And this is one of those very general and diffuse ways to spend public money.
Representative Lee? Representative Engen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to that point as well, I know the child tax credit is terrific, and we should look to expand it. I think if that 1790 bill introduction number were to be amended as it currently sits at 1750, I'd be more than open to that. But currently, we also have limits that are keeping a lot of people away from being able to actually benefit from the child tax credit. Right now, if you work a part-time job, 30 hours a week, $17 an hour, you're already considered too wealthy for that child tax credit. So this is that immediate relief that my testifier had referred to, and that's why we're going with this model as well.
Any other questions for the testifier? If not, we thank you very much. And we will now move on to Maggie Hange. I hope I said that right.
Thank you so much. It's nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
Please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Chair Davids. My name is Maggie Hange, and I am here on behalf of the Minnesota Catholic Conference. I'm a policy associate with the Minnesota Catholic Conference, here to share support for HF 18, the elimination of sales tax on these essential baby items. When a young couple is considering starting a family, or when a woman finds herself in an unexpected pregnancy, there's no doubt that the startup cost on items like cribs, car seats, strollers, and other things we've been talking about here are pretty daunting. A new parent faces the brunt of these costs more than anyone, especially at times when inflation is higher. When looking at the cost, and Rep. Engen mentioned these, when looking at the cost of some of the items in the bill, a quick search on places like Amazon or Target, you could spend nearly $2,000 on the items outlined in the bill and save over $100 if the state sales tax is eliminated. Though over $100 out of nearly $2,000 doesn't seem like an overwhelming number, it can make a big difference in the lives of new families. With that savings, the parents could in turn purchase a crib or mattress or sheets, or nearly pay for their changing table. They could purchase something that might be safer for their child. Eliminating this tax is particularly vital for our low-income families who are often living paycheck to paycheck and are more impacted by inflation. A small tax cut for the state could make a life-saving difference for a family who can now afford that safe crib or safe car seat, rather than getting those already used in a neighborhood swap and maybe close to expiring, as those things do have expiration dates. Minnesota's facing a demographic cliff. We have not had replacement fertility rates since 2006, according to the Minnesota State Demographic Center. And with the increasingly low birth rates, offering a small but impactful solution to families like eliminating the state sales tax on essential baby items could help lessen some of the fear felt by prospective parents. And it's not going to have a significant impact on the state budget. And in addition to key mechanisms such as the child tax credit that we've been champions of, this modest proposal would help all families, including low-income families. So we hope that everyone can get behind putting families first and help parents of infants by easing the cost of these necessary items, and we encourage you to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier from members? Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wish to testify? We've got the two first folks who are in the affirmative. Anyone with concerns? Go to the department. Nothing at this time? Okay. Okay, so we always, in this committee, we always want to have the department have kind of a seat at the table. Representative Herr. Chair Herr.
Thank you, Chair Davids. And I guess I don't know if this is necessarily a question for Representative Ingen or maybe for this committee, is that I think that the heart of what Representative Ingen is trying to do, I'm very much supportive of that. I often think about, though, that those who will know, like when we do something in taxes, how does community learn that something is now going to benefit them when it's something like a, tax exemption like this? And I'm often pained by knowing that, like, when I think about my community, I don't think I've ever once heard someone say, I'm going to buy something or not buy something because I might not have to pay taxes on this, that they are literally in survival mode. And even my husband and I, that we were both professionals, but we were first generation to go to college, first generation to actually get professional jobs. And we had to find ways to buy all of our baby products for free. I nursed because I know that that's the best thing to do for your child, but also because not nursing is really expensive, right? But I would have never thought, oh, maybe I would buy bottles and that would be tax exempt. And I think that people who are from lower income communities are extremely resourceful, and we figure out how to provide for our babies. But we do it in the most free and cost-effective way. And so I guess the part of me is wanting maybe to understand more about when we at the state pass something like this, how do we ensure that communities with the greatest needs who should benefit have this information? And I wonder if there's maybe, and I can talk to Representative Ingen maybe offline in this, because I do feel very much in the same heart space as he does around this. But really, like, how do we do this better? Because those who are the most vulnerable in our communities will be the ones with the least amount of information, with the least amount of access to think about, boy, I can buy these things and I'm going to get a $5 tax credit on this, right? They're not thinking that. And so how do we do better as a state, as a committee, in ensuring that the things that we do actually get to the community members who might need it most? And I don't know if that's for you or something we just, rhetorical, we just
Not
think
for me.
about, or or our staff, whoever that might be.
It's for Representative Ingen.
Whoever wants to answer that. Maybe it's more philosophical, and it's something that, weighs heavy in my heart all the time.
Thank you, Chair
Representative
Davids, and
Ingen.
thank you, Representative Herr. I agree with you. At the end of the day, if they don't even recognize that they're getting the savings, but it's happening, that's a good thing. If they go and purchase an item and they're saving money, that's going to be felt when, the 68% of Minnesotans who are living paycheck to paycheck now have more money to spend at the end of the month before that next one. And so if we want to talk about educational tools and resources to make sure that this gets to where it needs to go, I'd love to talk with you offline. But at the end of the day, this is going to provide savings whether they know it or not.
Representative Herr.
Thank you, Chair Davids. And I would love to take you up on that. I think my point is that they're not going to go to the store to even entertain buying this thing, so they're not getting a benefit, right? Like, I never even thought to go to the store at that time to get something because that was not ever an option for me. So that's really my point, but I would love to chat with you more offline in this, Representative Ingen. I think it's a good idea.
Thank you, Representative Herr. Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not sure where this question would go, maybe to research, or Representative Ingen might know, being a JV player. What I'm wondering is how many other states have used this exact same policy in their tax laws? Do we have that?
Representative Ingen or researcher, Representative Ingen.
I know, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Hewitt. I know Kansas, Iowa, Florida, and Kentucky are 4 states that have looked at some form of a sales tax exemption on infant care items. Whether it's the same language or not, I do not know. I can get back to you on that if that's information that you'd like to know, but I know that they have passed in recent years, at least Florida, Iowa, and Kentucky, some version of this.
Would anyone from research have an idea? Ms. Hagler?
Mr. Chair and members, as Representative Engen stated, there are those states that do have exemptions like this, and they kind of vary between which products are included and which ones aren't. With sales tax, you have to be really specific in the statute to list out all of the items. So I don't know that there are states that are exactly like this, but I can get back to the committee.
Okay, Ms. Hagler, would this have anything to do with streamlined sales tax? Would it affect that at all? Something like this?
Mr. Chair and members, no, it shouldn't.
Okay. Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Chair.
Representative Lee and then Stevenson. Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will be the last time I speak on this bill. But seeing as I think you kind of want questions for the department. I have a question about administering sales taxes like this and streamlining sales taxes, especially if, you're like a thrift store. Often low-income families will shop at thrift stores. And I'm curious because I shop there, my mom shopped there for a lot of stuff, but I'm curious about their inventory and whether their stores, because they are, like a second use store, actually code for the inventory correctly. And if perhaps some folks might be missing this exemption if you shop at places that maybe, don't code the stuff. So I hope the department is listening, maybe understanding that question, or I don't know if this is a question for Ms. Hagler to just explain kind of what happens and if this is something that happens often in this second market.
Ms. Hagler?
Mr. Chair and Representative Lee, I don't know for sure how exactly the department gets the message out to retailers that certain products have become exempt. That would be a good question for them, but theoretically, if you go to one store and it's exempt, it should be exempt at another store as well, but that would require the retailers to make adjustments to their POS system. And there might be some retailers that have organizations that do that for them, but I think maybe the department might be better able to speak to the administrative side.
Maybe we could bring the department up for that.
That's me.
Please state your name for the record.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Joanna Bears. I'm the Legislative Director at the Minnesota Department of Revenue. And Mr. Chair, Representative, those are good questions. We do, when there's a new tax or if there's a tax change, we will send letters to taxpayers. We will put notices out on our website. We'll do gov deliveries. We'll do tax loss summaries, making sure taxpayers know their obligation. And then we do, do audits. And during audit, if we see that something is mislabeled or misrepresented, we will do education and corrections at that time.
Representative Lee?
Just one follow-up. I'm just curious, if you could also explain, what is the incentive of doing audits? Would you choose to do that at a Target versus a Salvation Army or a Goodwill? I'm just curious because when you go to Goodwill, it's the bag of $5 things, right? And so I think that would be helpful.
Ms. Bears?
Representative, our Chair David's representative, there isn't, it's not like we would, these are random audits, so it's not that we are targeting certain areas or not, it's random.
Representative Lee? Good. Does the department have a position on this bill?
Chair David's, no position.
You have very strong feelings both ways?
David's, I do not.
Okay. Any other questions from members? If not, I'm sorry, Chair Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for Representative Engen. I'm just curious, infant eating utensils, would that include bibs?
Representative Engen.
That's a great question. Actually, if you're moving to make an amendment or talk offline about inclusion of that, I'd be more than willing.
Representative Stevenson.
Mr. Chair, no, I was asking because Representative Sozinski said that the virtue of this was that it was only for things used by babies, and people often tell me I should have a bib. And so I was wondering about that. But
Chair Stevenson, I had to go get a tie today because my oatmeal got it pretty good.
Yeah, Chair Davids, I think that that's something we should really think about if we're thinking about the structure of this bill. But I did want to just, I don't know, Chair, is this the time to offer comments, or is that later that we're going to have comments on the bill?
Sure.
Now, is it?
Their comments would be now, and then we usually have the author wrap up.
Okay, I wasn't sure if we were still doing questions to the department. I just wanted to comment that I do think that the spirit behind, or the intent behind this bill is appropriate and something that I think the whole committee shares, a desire to make it more affordable to raise children in Minnesota, which is one of the reasons why I'm so proud of the things that we did last biennium, including paid family medical leave, most notably, which I think has a huge impact on the cost of raising children in Minnesota, but also the school lunches. As I have kids myself, they're not babies anymore, much to my chagrin, but it is a significant saving to working families to not have to pay for lunches. But I do have concerns about this particular bill. The governor has a proposal to broaden the base of the sales tax and lower the rate, which I strongly support for a variety of reasons. But one of the reasons is because the narrower we make the base of our sales tax, the more volatile it becomes. And I think in a minute, we're going to hear about a different bill, which troubles me, the Tabor bill. And one of the reasons why that bill troubles me is because we have seen such wide fluctuations in forecasts over time. And I think that this is, a small thing, right? I'm not going to say this is going to make the sales tax like combustibly more volatile, but it's a step in that direction. And I think we should be cautious about that. I think we're going in the wrong direction when we're narrowing the base of the sales tax from a budget perspective, because I think it's going to make our revenue more volatile. And I think, as Chair Gomez and others have pointed out, there are other ways that we can provide financial relief to new parents, and maybe more targeted. As an aside, when I mentioned the school lunches, it reminded me that a lot of people in the legislature expressed concern about the school lunch bill because it was paying for the lunches of wealthy people. And now we have a bill that I think a lot of members have rightly pointed out might be disproportionately beneficial to people of greater means. Certainly, I was having a lot of memories of my own kids when people were talking about, borrowing or acquiring baby supplies from friends and neighbors. And now that my kids are a little older, I'm on the giving end of that. I'm trying to give away. If anybody wants any of my stuff, help me clean out my garage. But
You mean golf clubs?
baby golf clubs. Is that going to be on? Is that baby golf clubs?
That was an omission. It should have been on there.
Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to comment on the bill.
Well, thank you. We'll go with Chair Gomez last. Any other comments? Chair Joachim.
Thank you, Chair Davids. I think this might be a question for nonpartisan staff, and you'd think I know after being on taxes for a while, but sales tax and remitting it, which I've done before too, can get really complicated. Can you remind me if we have a income threshold on any of our sales tax exemptions or credits?
Mr. Chair and Representative Joachim, no, there are no income thresholds on sales tax exemptions.
Joachim?
Thank you. Just was wondering.
Okay, we'll wrap up with, Chair Gomez.
Thank you so much, Chair Davids. I sometimes ask Zach if he's here as the Chair of Ways and Means or simply a junior member of the Tax Committee, but, in his expression of this sort of tax nerd truism that you want to, as much as possible, expand the base and reduce the rate, I really appreciate him bringing up that point of like how it is that we build the fairest and most equitable tax system that we can. I kind of already spoke to the substance of this bill, but I just wanted to say something, because we're about to pass this bill off to Ways and Means. And certainly that is the right of this committee and of you, Chair Davids, to lead your caucus to do that. But, I don't want to I don't want to belabor this point on every bill that comes through this committee, but, we are talking about passing, we don't have the February forecast yet. We do not have an adopted budget resolution. One of the powers, for those new members of the committee, one of the powers of the House in tax policy is that all tax bills originate in the House of Representatives, not in the Senate. And as Chair Davids knows better than I, that is a power of the House that we protect. And so we are not in the habit of passing early tax bills off the floor of the House of Representatives that do not have negotiation and agreement behind them. There aren't even Senate files for these bills that we're going to be, theoretically, that we're going to be passing out of our committee. And so I just want to point out that this is, an unorthodox a series of actions that we're going to be taking in taxes over the next 5 weeks, that it is a series of actions that were you not going to meet the fact that you need 68 votes to pass something off the House floor, if there was a majority that wanted to pass these tax bills, that we would be really abdicating our responsibility and giving up a lot of our power as the House of Representatives, which Chair Davids and I both protect fiercely, right? Because that is like part of the way that we ensure that we have, tax policy that works for all Minnesotans. And so if you are looking for which tax bills are serious and which are not over the next 5 weeks, look at what we're passing and what we are laying over. Because no tax bill that we pass out of this committee, out of Ways and Means Committee, will actually be passed off the floor of the House, because you need 68 votes to do that. So I just want to point out that we have a lot of work to do together. And I look forward to, Chair Davids and I have had a lot of conversations about how it is that we're going to support our shared work this session, which is passing a bipartisan, balanced budget. And efforts like this, it's fine, do what you will, but this isn't pushing us toward that end. And, I'm going to not do anything to imperil our ability to do that actual work together, which is going to start in March after the special election settled, after we have a February forecast, after we hopefully have a budget resolution adopted. But, these things that we're passing out of committee they're bound for nowhere. And I look forward to figuring out how to put together a bill that we can all get behind, and that helps move us toward our real job, which is not, having spirited floor discussions. Our real job is figuring out how it is that we can work together, Republicans and Democrats, House, Senate, and Governor, to pass a balanced budget so that we can meet the needs of Minnesotans. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, Chair Gomez. Your points are very well taken, and one might think we don't be moving this too fast. The vote today will be to go to Ways and Means, but the upper hand is still on either side, that you have to have 68 votes. So we have to have 68 votes to get something passed. And I hope you and I working together doesn't start in March. I hope it started a couple weeks ago. Yep. And I think it has. And we'll talk about some of your concerns offline. But your points are very well taken. And as far as going to Ways and Means, it goes to the floor. It doesn't become law if there's no agreement with the 68 votes. So with that, we have one more bill. Representative Engen, any last comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair Davids, and thank you, Lead Gomez. Seeing as we need bipartisan support to pass any bill this session, this one received unanimous approval 2 years ago. I think that this is a serious bill, especially to the single mom who's struggling to get by. I hope that there is the appetite for us to get this work done. And I think that when we're weighing the state interests versus the interests of the everyday family, we should start putting the family first. We should start recognizing that families are struggling to get by, and that for a long time the state has sought to increase its own savings accounts while not allowing families to do the same. So I'd ask for a yes vote, and I appreciate the lively discussion today.
So with that, I will move House File 18 be passed and sent to Ways and Means. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion prevails. Thank you, Representative Engen. Thank you to your testifiers.